So, as I'm writing this, it's Monday night, and I just got finished watching the Rick and Morty Season 5 two-part finale. It airs a day late in the UK. And I've got to say, generally speaking, I thought it was a blast. I've had mixed feelings about the quality of some of Season 5, but these last two were pretty solid in my eyes. Though they do definitely still have that Season 5 feel and pacing, which I talked about a little in a previous video. As much as I love the absurdity of the Two Crows storyline, I do think it went on for a little long at the start of episode 10. Don't get me wrong, I thought the anime pastiche was a good bit, but maybe if it had been a little shorter, the rest of the episode would have been able to feel a little less relentlessly paced. I feel like there were a lot of big things they threw out one after the other without really giving us much time to think about them. But no, that's not what this video is about. It's not a review. I wanted to talk a little about how this finale interacts with and ultimately detonates the show's canon, and what it means for the show going forward. So yes, spoilers ahead. Canon, serialization, and fan expectations thereof were a major thematic part of this finale, and it's visible well before we get any hints of evil Morty. It's seen first in episode 9, the Portal Boys episode, with the way that episode flirts relentlessly with changing the status quo. Like in the way Rick and Morty break up, having a massive fight, trashing the garage, how Morty solves his own problem. In a fairly meta moment near the end of the episode, Morty tries to restore things back to this status quo, but Rick rejects this, and it seems like an emotional watershed moment with a groundbreaking recognition of just how abusive this relationship has been. Some might call it synergy, but maybe codependency is closer to the truth.
You need people whose flaws feed into each other. It's, what do you call it?
Codependent.
Synergy.
And then the music swells, and the episode ends. This teasing of expectations around the status quo continues full throttle into episode 10, Rick, Mariah, Jack. A not insignificant portion of the runtime is devoted to what seems to be Rick's new life as a crow samurai, and there's the old Morty fake out, and then before long all this development falls away utterly. Morty isn't old, Rick's crow life is a lie, and we seem to be back to square one. But then of course we're taken to the Citadel, and this restoration of the status quo turns out to be just as much an illusion as the changes to it with which the episode opened. It's at this point, after so much umming and ahhing, that the finale finally commits to being lore-driven, and tackling the long-running serialized plot threads which have been building up since season 1. But this commitment goes from 0 to 100 really fast. As I suggested earlier, the pacing is rocket speed from the moment we get to the Citadel. It's like, now the show has fully committed to tackling this big plot central to the show's canon, it wants to speedrun it, get it over as quick as possible. So we're plunged into Evil Morty, the Citadel, and a few Rickicidal pogroms for good measure, with the only respite being a few weak protests from Rick.
Morty, the idea was to get back to simple adventures. The Citadel runs on canon.
One neat way the episode signals its deep interest in ideas of continuity is the little pop-up Stan Lee joke.
You probably don't remember. Check out season 1, episode 9, Rickheads. Excel.
This is a reference to the little text boxes Marvel would put in comics when a previously set up bit of canon became relevant again after a while. Here's an example I found from my admittedly meager collection. This joke in Rick and Morty is doing a similar thing, but it's also poking a little good-natured fun at these continuities which spiral out of control, like the Marvel comic book universe, where the amount of different stories that have built up over the decades are rarely actually ended. Characters come back to life every now and then, and all the while new stuff is continually introduced. Maybe this moment shows Rick and Morty concerned with such a possibility. After all, they're still contracted for like 50 more episodes, and at this point, there's already a lot of lore built up. If more keeps coming, we may be in for a similarly crowded continuity. Or rather, there was a lot of lore built up before this finale. Because the ending doubles down on this concern, and rather than being another entry into the Evil Morty / Citadel story and leaving those characters in play, this episode takes a different approach. It blows up, detonates the canon. And I don't just mean that for once a storyline is resolved. I mean, that in itself is rare enough. Every Bird Person Tammy episode has left plot threads dangling, and there's that whole incest baby thing going on in the background, yada yada yada. You could argue that we'll see Evil Morty again, and maybe we will, but we don't need to. This is a pretty good last appearance for this character, I think. But no, it's not just this. After a number of earlier fake-outs, Season 5 Episode 10 fundamentally destroys the show's status quo, not only by concluding the biggest ongoing mystery, but by revealing that the entire setting for the show up until this point has been within the central finite curve, a cluster of realities separated from the wider multiverse, and then destroying it. So the setting of the show up until now, from Season 1, has been in a diegesis with Rick being the smartest being in existence, worlds upon worlds united by this commonality. It's the show's premise, and now it's gone, destroyed. The citadel of Ricks, this infinite reflection of our central character of ultimate intelligence, is decimated if not destroyed entirely. And the setting of the show going forward is one in which Rick is no longer necessarily this ultimate being. This is coupled with the fact that we now know his backstory. Sure, not every second of it, but the major mysteries are now largely answered. We know what happened with Diane and Beth, we know where he's been all these years, we know how the Citadel came to exist and why Rick came back. There, another fundamental aspect of the show set up from Season 1, the mystery of Rick's past, is again detonated. Boom, it's gone. Now, it remains to be seen if this whole gambit of destroying the status quo of the show up until this point will work in the long run, or even what it means for the next seasons. Rick quips that revealing his backstory will jump the shark for the show, and I don't think this is just a joke. I think that on some level, the writers are concerned that doing all this might be too much. So why have they done it? I've seen some people theorizing that Harmon and co were getting sick of people clamoring for Evil Morty's return, so they wrote the episode speedrunning that plot and destroying the previous continuity in order to get away from the serialization and be able to make fully episodic and standalone episodes going forward. Maybe, but I don't really buy this. As mentioned earlier, there are still other ongoing plot threads. No, I'm choosing to believe that they did this because they felt bored of the status quo and wanted to move past the inevitable Rick godhood idea and maybe explore some stories utterly unfamiliar to anything we've seen before. And that's why the show broke the central finite curve and destroyed the canon, not to free Evil Morty, but to free our Rick and Morty from the shackles of 5 seasons of established rules, settings, and weight. Honestly, the ending of this finale is a really good ending, to the point where I'm sort of sad it's happened now, when we know we have so many more episodes to go of the series, because I would be fine with this ending as just the ultimate definitive ending of the show. But I'm sure wherever the show does end, it'll be just as satisfying. Dan Harmon does know how to end a show after all, just look at Community. And that's all I have to say on the finale's treatment of canon and continuity. But I am planning to make at least one other video on this 2-parter, maybe sometime next week, I don't know. So let's call this part 1, but what did you think of the finale? Did it satisfy you? You've been watching Pillar of Garbage on YouTube. Episode, 100 episodes, 100,000 Pillar of Garbage episodes and playlists, 100 seasons, I'm Pickle of Garbage!